The Australian Ghost Whisperer with Katerina Legato and James Jennings. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode, a very, very special episode this week. It's the first time we've had a guest on our show who has been pronounced clinically dead more than once, but that's not the reason or the sole reason why he's on this week. It's also because he had an intense spiritual experience after he died. That is absolutely fascinating. I know that our viewers and listeners are going to love it. Katerina, you obviously are very tapped into the spirit world and have seen these things. So not new to you.
But I'm very excited to hear about Dallas's near-death experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really excited to hear about it. Yeah, it's really because it's such an individual thing and everybody has a very different experience.
100%.
So quite eager to hear about your near-death experience, Dallas.
Yeah, and the first thing that I'll touch upon, Dallas, is that before this happened, would you describe yourself as not a particularly spiritual person?
Correct. Yeah. Especially about, I guess, a year and a half ago, I would describe myself as being the opposite.
Right.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I had a lot of people coming into my world telling me about spiritual stuff, but to the point where it was actually kind of annoying me, and I was resisting it, you know.
Mm.
But when I think back now, perhaps it was you know, kind of guiding me into this experience. So when it did happen, I could recall that information and it made more sense.
That's right. It was preparing you for what lay ahead for you, Dallas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, perhaps the resisting is what led me into this situation. I'm not quite sure.
Your soul called on the experience.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Your soul called on the experience. Yes.
Yeah. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of what happened, Dallas. So obviously a pretty serious medical situation occurred, which led you to this.
Yeah, so it started off on Christmas Day last year, which is 2003. I just started to get a mild cold, sore throat, you know, the regular. I figured I would just take some vitamins and have some lemon honey tea and get rid of it, and I'd be fine by the next day or within a few days. But yeah, unfortunately, that was far from the truth, and it just got worse and worse, and to the point where I was dealing with it for about 2.5 months, and it went into my lungs and turned into a lung infection. Previously, I wouldn't get sick for too long, you know. I would usually be better in a couple of days when I get these things, but for some reason, I'm not quite sure what the external factors were. It could have been mold, but anyway, whatever it was, it got into my lungs and turned into a really bad lung infection. And I was doing everything I possibly could to beat it, you know, kind of natural type therapies, I guess you'd call it. And also in the end, I also went on to antibiotics as well, and just nothing would stop it. So it ended up what we suspect was ended up in encephalitis, which is basically an infection that reaches the brain, which is not fun.
Very dangerous. Yeah,
I can tell you it's not fun at all. It's extremely painful, and I was having seizures and what you would call hallucinations, visions, all types of crazy stuff that went on for weeks. Yeah. And yeah, I barely made it out alive, but fortunately I did. Yeah. So I wasn't pronounced like clinically dead, because the first time my heart stopped, I was actually at home,
Hmm.
and a friend had to revive me. And then the second time, I suspect, like, I'm not entirely sure if I died the second time because I didn't have anyone else with me. I was in a room by myself, but I felt the same sensation that I did when my heart stopped and my friend had resuscitated me. So I suspect that the second time I was either really close to death or I actually did die. It just happened to be that there was nobody there. And because I wasn't hooked up to any heart monitor or anything, because the infection affects your brain so much, your behavior is quite erratic. So they couldn't control me at the hospital because I was basically freaking out. So they had to put me in a room by myself without any heart monitor. So if my heart indeed stopped the second time, nobody knows, you know. But what I saw and experienced during that second time, I suspect that it probably did stop again.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first time your heart stopped and your friend resuscitated you, did you have an afterlife experience then, or was it the second time when you had the experience?
It was the second time, more so. But around that, what I think was happening in hindsight, I think I was tapering close to death for a couple of weeks. So I was having visions throughout that whole time. So the first time when my heart stopped, I didn't that at that specific time I didn't particularly have any vision or anything like that. I just experienced what it was like to die, and it was actually quite beautiful. But the second time was really horrible and terrifying. But
So
fortunately,
you were floating, so my understanding is you were floating in between dimensions from this reality into kind of the spirit reality because you were so ill that your soul was kind of shifting out of your physical body and shifting towards the spirit world.
that's
But
definitely
that's what I'm feeling, you were shifting between the two realities, this one and the other side, yeah? That's
that's
what it sounds
definitely
like to me.
yeah, that's definitely what it felt like.
Yeah. That's
And
what I'm feeling.
and what it, when and given the conversations and visions that I was having when I was there,
Mm.
is what makes me think that I was actually crossing over into a
Yeah, you were. I feel you were.
yeah. It was quite specific, some of the conversations and visions that I had that made me think that that's where I was. So the main I had this one, like, I had many visions and hallucinations, if you want to call it that.
Mm.
But one specific one, it happened a few days before my heart actually stopped. So I was unable to sleep for like weeks on end, and about I think it was about 4 days before my heart stopped. I got some relief for a moment and fell asleep and passed out. And in that moment, that's when I went up into the place that I can only describe as a void. And it felt like, thinking back about it, it felt like the highest dimension, like the highest place of
Was the void dark or was it bright?
it was bright, but it wasn't like what people I've heard say about, like a super bright light. It was more like a bright but subtle. If you've ever seen the movie The Matrix, and he ends up in a room and it's completely white,
Hmm.
and it goes out in all directions.
Yeah.
It was like that, but it had a soft, calm hue to it, like a soft, kind of like a baby blue. And I was just floating there. And at first, the first sensation I got was no pain. So leading up to that, I was in extreme pain. Like, if you can imagine every neural ending in your body firing at full pain, that's what I was experiencing. during seizures. So then all of a sudden I was feeling nothing, just this bliss. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
And
you
my
definitely had left your body.
yeah.
You
So
definitely, yeah.
when I first felt that sensation, I thought I was in my body, but then I realized that I wasn't in my body. I was just floating as a kind of energy, or what I would call now pure consciousness, because I've learned a lot about this stuff since this happened. And I've spoke to a lot of people that have kind of confirmed and explained things to me. But yeah, it was immediate relief, and my first feeling was that I wanted to stay there, and I just wanted to stay there because I couldn't bear coming back to that pain and
The
suffering.
pain.
Yeah, and it felt so blissful and beautiful there that my immediate reaction was I just wanted to stay there and not come back.
Understand.
And
It's understandable.
then I realized that I wasn't in my body, that I was just floating consciousness in this space, and it was, there was no time, there was no it was just kind of a void. Yeah.
Mm.
Did
And
you feel connected to anything beyond that void? Did you feel connected to, did you see anybody or see spirit guides, or did you feel
Yeah.
like you were, something else was guiding you? Or?
Yeah, so what happened was, this will sound weird, but there was no time there.
don't worry.
No, there's no, there's no
Yeah.
timing in the spirit world. Yes.
So there was no time, but there was still a sense that things were happening.
Around you.
Yeah, like things were happening in a sequence, but without times. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but that's what I experienced. And so once I got familiar with this feeling of blissfulness, and I was just happy to be there, and then I could realize that my body was gone, which at the time was
A relief.
Yeah, I was pretty over my body at that point. Then I became aware that there was a presence there, what I would call an observer. And in my mind, or in my consciousness, I knew that it was God, or what, not God in the sense of an old guy with a beard sitting on a cloud, but a energy and a consciousness, or a presence that was there, and it was patiently and lovingly observing me and just waiting for me to kind of settle in and to where I was. And then as soon as I felt that presence, we kind of started to communicate via consciousness. So although the memory of me speaking with my mouth and my tongue and my voice, it wasn't actually that. I was just communicating from pure consciousness. And so we were able to hear each other and go back and forth in this I guess you would call it like a telepathic state, but it didn't really relate to that place, because you didn't need telepathy because you weren't in a body, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You were part in this of being part of consciousness.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh God, everything's frozen. Can you guys hear me? Hello? Oh God. Hello?
I can hear and see you.
Yeah, you're back.
All
You're
right.
back.
Everything just froze for a little bit. We'll have to just backtrack a bit. So, what were you
Where
just
did
saying?
it?
What were you just
We
saying?
were talking about how he was part of the God, his consciousness and God consciousness. He was aware of being part of God,
Okay.
God consciousness.
All right, so maybe start. The last thing that I heard, everything froze up on my end, so we're just going to have to um, cut it out. Let's start from the last thing that I heard you say was it was like telepathy, but not telepathy because there were no bodies.
Mm.
So
Correct.
if you just give it like a few seconds of silence so I can edit it in, and if you can continue from there, mate, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
So in that sense, I was able to communicate with this presence without words, and just in pure consciousness.
Yeah, because you became aware in your heightened state that you were part of God consciousness and God consciousness was a part of you. You
Correct.
merged together in a much heightened state because you were on the other side out of the physical body. That kind of makes us feel separate from God consciousness.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean by now when I speak to people, they confirm things to me, and when they explain it because they obviously have a better prior knowledge to it, I guess, because it's quite new to me. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that is what it was. So yeah, that's what it felt like. And then a dialogue opened up. So my I guess you would call it a kind of impulse reaction was I basically thought or said, who am I and who are you, to this presence.
Hmm.
So this is where it gets kind of full on. But so the presence was able to speak to me in my mind with multiple phrases, and I would hear them at the same time and process them at the same time. So it said to me quite clearly, it said, I am God. And then at the same time, it said, you are God. Which to me was like, I couldn't quite comprehend or accept the second part of that statement, or the second phrase that I heard at the same time. Because in there was a inner knowing in me, in this place and in this presence, that I could accept, and I knew that it was God, or what you would call the source of all things. But the second part I was struggling with, and I was having difficulty accepting that. And I guess you could call that my programming, right?
Correct.
Because I'd been told always since I was a little kid that I was born into sin, and that I was needed to be forgiven and redeemed and all this kind of stuff.
God was somewhere far away and separate from us. Yeah, this is the program we've all received. So it's very hard to embrace that, we are, the spark of divinity is within us. And when we shed this physical body, we become pure consciousness. And pure consciousness is the love, is God. Yeah.
I think so. I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this presence, or this consciousness was again, there was no time, but it was being patient with me. It was like kind of like a loving parent would sit and with their child who doesn't quite comprehend something. Is the same type of energy. So I said, it was strange, because my immediate reaction, immediate response was, how can I be God when I'm just a boy from Penrith? That's literally what I said, right? Which is not something I would normally say in day-to-day life, because I was born in Penrith, but I didn't really didn't really have the greatest time there, so I wouldn't really I wouldn't
I
these,
so relate. I was raised in Fairfield, not far from you. So you
yeah,
just didn't go around in those areas saying, I am God.
yeah,
God, I so relate with that. I went to public school and it was like all you had to do was make sure no one's going to beat you up.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
was the
exactly, right.
biggest challenge, let alone telling those kids you were God. Yeah, I get that. Oh, God.
Uh,
So so like um yeah, even when I was a kid, even when I was a young man, you know, every time I would mention that I come from Penrith and I was in uh, the city or something, people would like make fun
Look
of me.
down on you.
So,
It's so funny because we used to go out discoing back in those days in the city. And so when, people would say, where did you come? Oh, we just came from down the street. We never mentioned that we'd come all the
yeah,
way from there. Because it was like, oh God, people looked down on us because we were from these areas that were not considered very upper class at all.
yeah.
Mm.
It was quite a rough
It's
area.
very rough. Oh God.
Yeah, and I had a lot of stressful memories from there. So, and then I grew as a teenager, a bit later on in life, I grew up in this beautiful coastal town. So I would usually just refer to myself from that town, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
Or I would say I'm from the current place where I'm currently living, right? But what I realized in hindsight after the experience is I was just speaking pure truth.
Mm.
And I was speaking truth outside of time. So when I said I'm just a boy from Penrith, now that I think back, it makes total sense because I'm not my age. If I were outside my body and I was in this place, I was
Ageless.
yeah, ageless, correct. So I went back to the very beginning.
ah,
So I spoke from the beginning, like not the beginning of all things, but the beginning of my life this time around, right? So I said, how can I be God? I'm just a boy from Penrith. And the voice or the presence just kind of sat with it in this patience. And then lovingly it said back to me, because I am God, you are God. It said the same thing again and just repeated it. And I was still having difficulty accepting that. So I was just kind of floating there in this sort of resistant state of what this presence was telling me. And then it said to me, I want you to say it. And I immediately said, I'm not saying that.
Oh, yeah.
I immediately said, I'm not saying that. And all this fear, of how could I
The
possibly
program coming undone. That's the fear. The
correct,
program finally coming undone.
correct. And it pretty much this consciousness or this presence, it kind of laughed at me, right? But not in a condescending, mean way. It was more like like you would laugh at your child learning something new, right? And it just kind of laughed because like I bumped into this super spiritual guy the other day and I was telling the story and he cracked up laughing and he's like, you said no to go, you said no to go. You said no to God,
Yeah,
and I
that
was like,
is
yeah,
cute.
it's just
You up there having a fight. I'm from Penrith. How I'm not God?
yeah. So
like
so
so I kind of sat with it and it patiently waited for me to process this information, and then all of a sudden, in a more kind of stern way, the voice said, I want you to say it. And it was an order, and I was like, oh. So I reluctantly, I whispered it as quiet as I possibly could whisper it. And I said it in the sense that it was more of a question than it was a statement. So I said, I kind of like, as if you're getting ready to get struck by lightning. Because I had the sense that this was quite a powerful statement that could have repercussions, So I whispered it like this, and I said, I am God, like that, even quieter. And as I whispered it, I started to feel my human lips whispering it. Like I started to feel my body again, which is something that's only just come back to me now. And then I went bang, and I fell out of that place, and I was just like I had the sense of falling. But if you've ever fallen on a ride or out of if you've skydived or whatever, and you get that feeling of falling, this was like that times 10, because I had the sense that I was falling from the highest dimension through all the dimensions back to the 3D realm, I guess you would call it, into my body. And I woke up in bed, and I had my hands out in front of me like this, and I was like, and in that moment, I jumped up out of bed, like sat up in bed, and I was staring into my hands, and I was completely unfamiliar with my hands. So at this point, I was back in my body, and I had no idea who, what, or where I was. And the interesting thing is this sensation of not knowing what you are. I didn't even know. I couldn't. I was having trouble knowing whether I was in one location or across the room, and I was having difficulty coming into the reality that I was localized within this physical form. So it was quite full on.
Did you feel like you wanted to be back? Was it a shock to find yourself back in your body after being in such a refined, let's say, frequency? Did you feel very dense again and very uncomfortable?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you would have felt very restricted, because as spirit you would have felt so freed and multidimensional. To be kind of, as you said, like you were kind of falling back down in your body, you must have felt really like you were squashed up again.
Well, for the first few seconds, I felt like I was in almost in different parts of the room, like I wasn't local. So at the time, like this was during a few days where I'd actually gotten a little bit better, and we were hopeful that I was out of the woods. So my son had come back and spent, I think it was the night, just that night, or maybe it was 2 nights. But anyway, so he was there, and we were hoping that I was getting better, but unfortunately, that's not how it was turning out. So I looked over and saw him, because we were living in a caravan, and I looked over and saw him in the other bed, and I wasn't sure if he was me or if I was me for a few seconds, and it was quite a strange feeling to not.
Yeah, because you were multidimensional. So as you came back, all those aspects of yourself were still kind of integrating and coming back together again. That's why you would have felt as though part of you was here, there, and everywhere, because you were still integrating.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And but I also had a strange sense of a really rapid timeline of evolution. So I had this for a moment, I was freaking out that I didn't have hair on my body, which was a really weird feeling. Like I felt naked, like I'd been missing a much more robust and warm layer of I know it sounds crazy, but I had this sensation that all my fur had been removed, and then I was completely kind of
exposed.
Yeah, and it wasn't a good feeling. Like, yeah, this form felt quite vulnerable vulnerable to me.
Can
Mm.
imagine. So, like feeling naked. So, do you feel like you tapped into that aspect of yourself that was at the beginning of evolution? You know, like more, an ape or a Cro-Magnon man or something. Is that what it was? Where you were tapped into a much more primitive version of yourself that you probably lived, I don't know, millions of years ago?
That's literally what it felt like.
Mm.
I can't say because I don't know, but that's literally what it felt like. It was really yeah, it was like experiencing eons of time within a few seconds.
That's mind blowing.
Mm.
Mm.
And Dallas, in our previous conversations, you told me that you also had an experience, and I'm not sure if it's from when you spoke with God in the void, but you expressed reluctance about coming back because you felt so at peace and you weren't in pain where you were, and you threw up examples to God of like, well, send me back as a fish. Um, can you
Yeah.
can you tell us a bit about that? Because I think this is fascinating.
Okay, yeah. So um as I said before, what was happening was I was coming in and out of these visions and dreams over over weeks, basically. So I was going into seizures, and then from the seizure, I'd come out, or in sometimes in the middle of a seizure, I'd have one of these dreams or visions. And at one point, I was laying on my bed, and I was quite delirious and just in almost in and out of consciousness. But at this point, I'd really given up. I
Mm.
couldn't take anymore because
Mm.
it had been going for quite some time, and I'd also in the past suffered a fair bit of illness and pain, and it's a long story, but I just reached a point where I was over it. You know, I couldn't take it anymore.
We'll be back after this quick break. Hello everyone, James and Katarina from the Australian Ghost Whisperer here. Just letting you know that we are now doing house and business clearings. We've been having a lot of inquiries, so I thought we would let you know. If you don't know what that is, Katarina, please explain.
Yeah, so a house or business may be haunted or have stagnant negative energy from previous owners. Maybe someone's put the evil eye on you, or you're dealing with psychic attacks, curses, or demonic interference, which may cause physical and spiritual illness to you and your family members. I'd like to also let you know that I've written 2 books on the paranormal, and I'm highly experienced in the process of cleansing and clearing these disturbing interferences and turn your place into a loving, light-filled sanctuary.
Katarina is also available for healings and exorcisms if that is something you may need. And if you would like to read some testimonials from Katarina's satisfied clients, you can do so at her website, which is katarinalegato.com.au. We also did a video recently where we cleared a house of spirits, and we have a response from the very happy owner. We'll put that in the comments below so you can see a link to that. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can do so via email, which is australianghostwhisperer@gmail.com, or you can give us a call on 0404 258 949. And we are based in Sydney, but we're also happy to travel interstate, and we are absolutely happy to help.
Happy to help, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So I started to basically just wish for my death, essentially,
Yeah.
and kind of hope for it. I just wanted out, especially after I'd been in that void. I kind of just wanted to go back, you know. If
Yeah.
that's where I was going to end up, that's where I was happy to be, right? So just quickly, so after I'd landed back in my bed, I had this experience for hours on end where it took me quite a while to remember what I was and figure out where I was and all that. So then it would have probably been about maybe a week later I was laying in bed in that, like I said, disorientated and almost in and out of consciousness. And then all of a sudden I felt the presence of that consciousness again. But this time I wasn't in a void. I was just laying in my bed, kind of delirious. And all of a sudden it said to me basically, so if you want to leave, what do you want to come back as? And I was in such a panic and in so much pain, I just said, oh, just anything, just whatever, a fish. I'll come back as a fish, which is wild because I never really thought about or wanted to come back as a fish. I just wanted an escape from this pain. So then all of a sudden it was as if this consciousness was like, okay, you want that? And then, but kind of didn't click its fingers, but it, kind of something clicked. And then all of a sudden I was in the consciousness of a fish. And I know it sounds crazy, but I wasn't,
I can relate to that.
I wasn't Dallas. I wasn't like Dallas within a fish. I was literally like the consciousness of a fish. So it was much more simple. I didn't have all this what do you call it, like inner dialogue. I was just kind of in my in my body and just quite clear and simple, and I had this different sensation of consciousness, and the rigidity of my body was quite present. Then all of a sudden I felt the water, like I had this extra sense, right? So as soon as the water moved in a certain way, I felt it. And I felt it like in an alarming way. And then my eye kind of looked back and there was this bigger fish just bolting after me, and I tried to swim away, and I felt this rigidity of my body and my muscles in this different form, and then bang, I was gone, and I was back in my human body on the bed, still kind of half delirious. And I was like, well, that wasn't great experience. So then I said, hang on, okay, let me think about this more. I need to really think about this because obviously my decisions, if this is real, it's going to have consequences. So I need to think about it. So yeah. I thought, what animal did I really love? And the eagle came to my mind, because I'd often said I'd love to be an eagle, I'd love to fly. And I said back to this presence, I said, all right, I'll come back as an eagle. And it was like, okay, boom. All of a sudden my consciousness shift again. And I was in the consciousness of this eagle, but it wasn't it wasn't like, flying in the sunset and all this stuff. It was like it sounds really strange, but I had the sensation that my neck was kind of on this sort of gimbal type skeleton, I guess you would say, and time was slightly different. The way time was going was more twitchy, and I saw these images and kind of, I guess you would call it like almost like a montage of memories or experiences of being this eagle, and they were quite terrifying. So at one point I was like pulling this flesh off something, and there was these sinews and what do you call it, tendons, and then all of a sudden I felt this again, my consciousness was different. So it was this time it was more heightened and it had more clarity, but it still wasn't as complex as a human. And so I felt these kind of emotions, but they were different. They were more like feelings within the body or the form. And I had this sadness of my offspring being taken by snakes and goannas, and the stress of looking after my eggs and all this stuff, and then it just kind of went flash past. But this time around, I didn't have an experience of dying. I just came back and landed in my body again, and the experience was quite it was quite traumatic and terrifying. And I was like, wow, that wasn't all it was cracked up to be, being an eagle. Anyway,
Yeah, the moral of the story is that as long as you keep coming back to this world, no matter what you come back as, you will suffer. Because this
exactly.
is dog eats dog world. So
Exactly.
was there any options given to you of not coming back here at all and perhaps going somewhere where it's a little bit more higher, more refined, more harmonious? Were you given that option?
For me personally, I wasn't. So
Do you
like,
think that's because you still needed to come back here for further growth?
definitely. I literally pretty much figured this out later in this experience, because I had
Yeah.
another vision that was more clear. But yeah, so what you just said is exactly what I ended up I guess figuring out, that this is what it was showing me, because I then
But you
came
weren't ready to raise yourself out of this 3D into a higher.
well, what it was showing me, because then I had a vision of a whale, and then long story, then I negotiated again, and I thought I was outsmarting God, and I said I said I would come back as a rainbow, right? Because I was like, after I experienced the suffering of these animal forms,
Yeah, they do so.
I was like, well, maybe I can come back as something that's not like doesn't have eyes and
Doesn't
ears.
have a life force.
So I negotiated that I would come back as a rainbow, and then I thought I was quite smart. But anyway, then I had an experience where I woke up in this body as me, but I had no control over what I was doing. So on the physical level, you could say it was the brain infection, but I got up out of bed and I walked outside, and I walked out into the front yard, and I was acting quite strange. My body language was different, and I had this overwhelming sense of power, like this amazingly powerful feeling. And I walked out the front and I looked up in the sky, and there was a rainbow in the sky. And I put my hands up to the rainbow like this, and there was some other weird stuff where I for some reason picked up a mango seed that was in the yard, and I had this deep knowledge of the mango seed and the timelines of all these thousands of mangoes trees that had led to this seed, and how powerful life is within this seed. And then I carried that out, and then I walked out and saw this rainbow, and I put my hands up to the rainbow like that. And then a second rainbow formed under the first rainbow.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden I had this sense, and I realized now that what it was showing me is that I am the rainbow. I am. And then this bird flew in front of the rainbow, and I had this overwhelming sense that I am the rainbow. I am the bird. I am the clouds. I am the tree. I am all. I am one with everything. And I really felt this sensation. Then I was, in my mind, like, again, a lot of this stuff came to me in hindsight, where I realized what it was showing me. But I was like, oh wow, it is showing me that I am. It was allowing me to be the rainbow for a period of time. Because when I had said to this consciousness that I wanted to be the rainbow, it did say to me, you're only going to last about 5 minutes, right? and I said, I'll take it, because 5 minutes escape from that pain was you know, take what
Heavenly.
you can get. So when I had this realization that I am the rainbow, I am connected, everything is one, that's when I kind of clarified what it was saying about I am God, you are God, in the sense that it's not that I am the all-powerful God, it's that I am a part of the consciousness of God and an expression of that consciousness. So therefore, I am connected to the source, which is the creator of all these things, including the rainbow, the bird, the tree, and this 3D realm. So when I realized that, then the rainbow faded. Then I fell on the ground, and I came back into my own consciousness, which I had some control over, and I just started crying. on my hands and knees out in the front yard. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
that's
What
the
a
realization that you were part of creation, of
beautiful.
everything that God created. You were part of that. That part of you was a part of them. Mm,
Yeah, it was deeply profound.
mm.
It is. Well, it sounds like this is, I mean, safe to say that it's completely shifted your view of reality and what you are and who you are, Dallas.
Yeah, totally.
Do you feel like you have more reverence and respect for all life now?
Definitely.
Yeah.
More compassion.
Mm,
Cause
yeah.
I still have my I guess what would you call earthly neurological patterns and impulses and reactions, but it's I'm underneath that. I'm just completely different. Yeah. I don't react to things as much as I used to in a way that would present division. So before I would have this thing about us and them, good and
Yeah.
bad. Now it's more a deeper sense that all is one, and it's all happening and playing out for a reason.
Mm.
Yeah. And you know what, Dallas? I mean, I've only seen you a limited amount of times over the years, but recalling when I first met you or the other times I've seen you, there's an energy of serenity with you
Mm.
now that is very noticeable that I don't think was there before. There seems to be a real sense of inner peace with you that I just have never encountered before.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously I'm still human. I still have my moments, but yeah, I my whole life, for whatever reason, it's childhood trauma and all this kind of stuff. I For a long time I was caught in this way of being that was just unsettled. I just always feeling unsettled. Even when I was in beautiful, I go sit under a sunset and I'd sit there and have this feeling of being unsettled and and not happy. Like, yeah, it's hard to explain. But since especially since this, but I think leading up to this event, I was doing a lot of work to find inner peace. So I was getting better and better, but this was just like,
Oh, of course, that's life
yeah,
changing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now I've come back and I can just because I didn't really have a choice. Because when I came, especially after the moment where my heart stopped for about a minute and I
Mm.
woke up, I had days where I experienced this sensation of heaven on earth. So I was walking around and all the sounds were like crystal clear and the colors and people had this kind of almost like white light, and I was just in love with everything, and I felt this sense that all is one, and I really like viscerally experienced it. and it wasn't anything that I did that brought it on. So it was just like shown to me like a gift. So once you've had that sensation, it's hard to go back.
Yeah.
It's hard to go back after that and feel sad or feel sorry for yourself, because I can kind of recall that memory, and then it comes up again to some degree. At some points, I can actually bring it back if I
Take
really,
yourself there. Yes, of course you can.
yeah,
You can,
yeah,
because you've already experienced it. Plus, you would have come back and you were so filled with so much light. Everything would have been, all your chakras, your energy field, so activated by being in the presence of God that, yeah, you carried that very vividly within you through the physical world. So you
yeah.
were
I think
like a
so.
walking, the embodiment of God walking through, this 3D dimension going, oh, I'm just so, feeling the love. Yeah, of course. It's
And
beautiful.
funnily enough, the people that were around me at the time, they felt it as well. They were saying that
They
it
felt
was
your
just,
energy.
yeah, they were saying it was just really amazing to be in and around. So like all these people were just turning up to my house and basically sitting around me and sitting with me. It
Oh, that's
was quite,
beautiful.
It's like
yeah,
sitting
Wanting
around
to have a little try taste of your energy, wanting to have a little, yeah, that is beautiful.
basking in it.
well,
Mm.
I was acting so strange and saying such profound and beautiful. I had no, what, I was just speaking sort of pure truth. So
Mm.
I was saying all these really beautiful things, and it was just coming so natural, and everything just kind of made sense. It was like I had a complete absence of fear, um, or yeah, I had no insecurity or anything like that. I was just in this pure state. But unfortunately, that didn't stay. That was only for a few days, and then things kind of went a little bit pear-shaped as well. Yeah,
Oh,
but I
are
think,
you able to meditate and take yourself back to that space? Have you tried meditating and just being in a space of silence?
yeah, I went back there only a couple of days,
Good.
and I had to sort of pull myself out of it a bit, because it was like, oh, because it was such a full-on experience. Like I'm saying, I'm at the moment I'm talking about all the beautiful stuff, but some of it was quite terrifying, you know. So when the feeling comes back, it's also like, oh, like I it can be a tiny bit scary, if that makes any sense. But when I was doing it the other day, I was more in that beautiful feeling, and it was, yeah, it was quite blissful. It's this sense that everything around you, not in a oh, how do I explain it? Not in a way that is about you, but it's this feeling that everything around you is for you.
Mm.
It's like it's been put here for you, like a gift. Like even when you hear a bird sing in a tree, it's like that moment was put there for you, and in a way you put it there for you because you are connected to the source.
Mm.
It's that kind of sensation.
It's amazing. I know, Dallas, we've had conversations where we kind of start tripping out going, the weird thing is, us having a conversation, the three of us having a conversation right now, we're all aspects of the same thing. And that's just, it's so hard to get your head around because in this world of duality, we are just absolutely not really tapped into that or accept that as reality. But that's the truth. The truth is, we are three aspects of the same thing sitting here right now, conversing with each other. And I think that's majestic and beautiful and just a lot to get your head around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, even on a deeper not deeper, but in a different way. Like when you walk past a tree, you are the tree. The tree is experiencing you.
Oh, so nature has its own consciousness, has
Yeah,
consciousness also. Yeah, if you sit and hug a tree or you stand there, hug a tree, you can actually begin having a conversation, if you like, with nature,
to-
with the
to-
tree.
totally.
And
Yeah,
trees are very ancient, especially when you find these really big old trees. They hold memory of the past, of history. So if you can
yeah,
tap into the consciousness of nature, there's just so much to learn from that. But again, Dallas, everybody's so busy living in their small bubble that they don't care. There's just like survive another day, another week, another month, another year, survive, pay bills. People don't stop to really relish nature and realize that it is a consciousness and that you can sit and you can actually communicate with that consciousness. And this
100%.
is what's caused the feeling of separation and takes us into that space of duality. Yeah, it's sad.
Totally.
But I think you're having this wonderful experience. You're able to speak about it. Do you feel one day you might want to write a book about it, perhaps, Dallas?
Yeah,
Because
well,
that's
I'm
what I'm
current.
feeling. It'd be nice to write a book about your experience. And, it's really good. We need more voices to remind everybody that we are all part of creation and to
Yeah,
have more love, compassion, and respect, because this world is very, very um, very much in a state of separation and definitely not enough love and compassion.
Mm.
yeah. Well, I am actually writing it all down in a book. It was,
Beautiful.
and interestingly enough, during the experience, I I pretty much got told to write it down in a book.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm sure
So
you would have.
I would have never I would have never even considered something like this. So it was
Mm,
just there was things happening to me, and I guess messages coming to me while this was all going on. And strange, sounds strange, but I was seeing glimpses of the future as well in certain states, and certain things that I saw have now actually happened. So it was it it was as if it was showing me that in order to give me confirmation, or guide me.
yeah, wow.
So even me reconnecting with James was part of it, because at one stage throughout this, I thought I was literally going to die, and I I did a post on social media, and it was super random because I was kind of off the planet at the time. Like the infection was, I'm pretty at that point pretty well into my brain, so I just put up this random post, kind of trying to express myself one last time, to my circle of friends before I passed away. And then James saw that, and then he started connecting with me throughout the experience. And so even though I wasn't quite coherent and I was probably pretty random and weird, James and I were messaging each other back and forth throughout the experience. So some of my messages probably didn't make much sense at all.
No, they
But
did.
yeah.
They did. They did. I could tell from your messages and what you wrote, which prompted me to reach out to you, that you were experiencing something profoundly spiritual. I knew that you were having a profoundly, deeply engaged spiritual experience, and yeah, I was just compelled immediately to talk to you about it because I just knew you were going through something incredible. And yeah, looking back at those messages, yeah, a lot of it is way out, but it all makes sense. Like none of it seemed like, what is that? Oh, it was you articulating in a pretty clear way some very difficult things. Um, so, and I also got this sense of like, oh my God, is Dallas going to die? And I kind of felt this responsibility to talk to you and get your story if you were going to pass. I wanted to in somehow be a keeper of that for you. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Um,
how I think that it was, it was divine. I can't think of the word, but it was all happening for a reason, even though this higher consciousness knew that I wasn't going to die,
Right.
but it had to, it led me to believe that I probably was.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have got the lessons in the same way.
mm,
Because even throughout it, it was, I was not hearing voices, but it's kind of hard to explain, but these, it was talking through me and saying things like I was involuntarily saying things.
Mm.
And one of the things it was saying to me is, don't worry, it's all going to be all right. You're going to be okay. And, but yeah, going back to what I was just saying, it was basically telling me to connect to you, and it was telling me to write this book. And it said, because I'd given up and said, listen, I'm out. I want out. I give up. It was basically saying to me, you still have more to do. There's more to this
yeah,
story.
I
If you,
see the yeah, I
yeah,
see the book being published.
it
Mm.
Good.
said if you choose to, you can stay here and um, you can die. But this is another part of the story where it showed me this. This was where it was quite terrifying, and where I saw a vision of my death and all this type of stuff, and it was not great. Yeah, it was very sad, and there wasn't much that good that came from my death in that timeline that I was shown. It was kind of a bit of a non-event, really, and it
Mm.
was it was sad for my spirit as well.
Yeah, you'd rather leave when you've left some sort of a legacy behind.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
was the second time when I experienced the sensation of death, I was alone in a room, isolated in a hospital, because they thought I was crazy because they hadn't figured out yet that it was a brain infection. So they figured I was just not some, they, they've just got to assume the worst, that maybe I'm on drugs or I'm
Yeah.
psychotic or whatever.
Mm.
And when I experienced that, uh, sensation of death alone, it felt like I was in a really bad place to die. And
Yeah.
it wasn't going to be good for my spirit to go in that way, because I felt that I was going into really low place, really low dimensions, or whatever
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. It kind of felt like a bit hellish, like I
Yeah.
was.
Well, yeah. Yeah. You would have gravitated towards something like that because of the state you were in,
That
emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. Yeah.
Mm.
and then I started to see this vision of my funeral and my son and my relatives
Mm.
and friends, and being told about my death and all this stuff. And then I realized in that place that I don't want to go this way. I don't want to actually, I don't want to die. So it had shown me that if you come back as one of these animals or whatever, you're going to face the same struggles anyway, just in a different form.
Mm.
So I realized, why would I leave my son behind and leave this life? There's so much actually good in my life. Why would I leave it to go and experience one of these other lives and experience this trauma and struggle as well,
Mm.
where I could come back here, deal with it, overcome it, and fulfill a higher destiny or a higher calling.
Mm.
And
A
so that's
higher
what
purpose.
higher purpose, yeah. So the way that I came back, I realized in hindsight, after speaking with people like yourself, that I was given a choice.
Mm.
And the way I came back was I started to visualize myself back with my son in the most happy moment you could ever imagine. Like, I was just imagine us together smiling and laughing. So I went, like, this was when I was in the hospital, and I'd seen a vision of me dying in that room and them coming in and finding my body and then putting me up. Like, they were quite cold towards me because they didn't know me. They had this kind of non-emotion towards me, and it was really sad. And then they put me up on this bed, and they wheeled me through the hallways, and I felt myself being wheeled through the hallway of the hospital and the fluorescent lights going over me. And then I was put into this cold room, and that's when I started to experience. Then I went out of my body and into different locations and saw people living their life, and I'd already died. Then they hadn't yet been told of my death, and then them being told, then the funeral playing out and all that stuff, right?
Wow.
So at the very end of it, I was in this dark place where in the vision of my funeral, it was quite blurry, but I'm pretty sure it was my son and his mum standing there at the end of the funeral, and there was this silence at the end of the funeral where they didn't want to leave and they didn't want to accept it as a reality. And then from there, I was like, oh no, what have I done? What have I've chosen this terrible outcome. And I started to try and I thought if I could somehow get myself out of this, I knew that I was in the hospital room, and I was trying to push my consciousness out of the hospital and back to my son in that happy place. And I just focused on that as much as I possibly could and tried to bring back color and light, because where I was before was all darkness. There was no color. It was just black and white visions. And then when I did that, all of a sudden, after a period of time, I just went bang, and I woke up in that room by myself, and I was back in my body, and I was still alive. And then I had to endure all types of terrible stuff.
Yeah. But you made it through. Hey, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
And you have an abundance of wisdom that you have acquired through your experience, that you will just keep growing and evolving. You'll write your book, and you'll go out there and talk about more and more about your experience and help awaken others.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so. That's your purpose. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
thank you for that.
It's like, what an amazing, incredible
Beautiful.
story. We're so lucky for you to come and share it with us. I know there is so much more to talk about. I know your experience even extends far beyond what you've said on this episode. So perhaps we can have you back as a guest another time, and we can talk a bit more about other aspects to your experience. But a big gratitude from the both of us for sharing.
Yeah, thank you,
Alice.
No, I'd love that, and thanks so much for listening and having me on. Appreciate it.
We have loved having you. Thank you, Dallas.
Yeah.
All right. Much love.
Much love.
Much love. And
Thank
to
you.
everyone listening, much love to you, and we will see you again on another episode very soon. To gain access to private spiritual development classes, guided meditations, and live Q&As with Katerina, please visit www.patreon, that's patreon.com/The Australian Ghost Whisperer.